Welcome to the Heavy Spoilers Show. I'm your host Paul, and it's time to Mambo number 5 as we go over the Umbrella Academy Season 3. The new series has just dropped on Netflix, and throughout this we'll be talking about what happens at the end, the clues that we have for its true meaning, and also our theories on where things will be heading in the future.
Spoiler alert.
Now the season ends with the universe very much being reset, and we see that Hargreeves has not only taken over the world, but he's also managed to bring Abigail back to life. If we time travel back to the 10th episode in Season 1, then it actually explains a lot of the big reveals at the end of this one. In it we caught the man whose moniker is the Monocle on his homeworld as he said goodbye to his wife. Sadly his world is dying and he had decided to travel to Earth in order to quote-unquote save us. He opened up a jar full of strange glowing orbs that he then released, and for a long time it's been theorized that these were absorbed into the mothers who gave birth to the superpowered children. We get this confirmed at the beginning of the season with them flying into Ben's mother as she rides a train. This somewhat plays into the post-credit scene featuring a version of Ben, which we'll talk more about later on in this video. Now come the end of the season, we see these orbs being absorbed in order to power up Hargreeves' machine so that he can start things all over again. Thus I think that his plan the entire time was to create beings that ended up taking these orbs inside of them so they could mature and grow to the point that the universe could be reset and he could start everything over again. This could explain why he ended his own life in the first season, as potentially he wanted to bring them all together and have them unite so that the machine could be powered. It's also possible that the world we see in episode 10 of the first season is actually an alternate timeline in which Earth was destroyed, and this is why he has to go back and save it. Big theory time on that one, but let me know below exactly what you think is happening. Also hit the thumbs up button, yeah?
Give me rent.
Now in season 2, we watched as he ended up becoming heavily involved in the space race, and the comics flesh him out as a Nobel Prize winning Olympic gold medalist. There are other theories that we'll talk about later on, but Hargreeves' wife was clearly very important to him. In the season we learn a bit more about Luther's mission and discover that he was also guarding her body on the moon, which had been put in stasis similar to Nora Freeze. We're going to be breaking down why this is and also looking at the comics for some clues on where things could be going. Now the series is loosely based on the third volume in the Umbrella Academy run titled Hotel Oblivion. Not only does this debut the Sparrow Academy, but it also features the titular location. However, the similarities pretty much end there, and outside of the Sparrow members, the works are completely different. For example, in the source material, the hotel was an interdimensional prison that housed all of their villains, whereas here, it's hiding something much more powerful. Now when we last left our intrepid Umbrella Academy, they had saved the world again, but in doing so they altered events in the past, and made it so that there were completely new members of the team. These were known as the Sparrow Academy, who, as I mentioned, also featured in the comics. The graphic novel completely did away with the time travel, and it simply had Mother taking Vanya to meet the group. These had been secretly picked by Hargreeves to act as a backup, and they showed up at the end of Volume 3 in order to save the day. Now in the show, there's a number of reasons why things changed. Due to Dallas, he was disgusted by the group, and he ended up picking other members, with Ben only being there because he never actually met him due to his death. This is also mirrored in Harlan, who we discover inherited Victor's powers. For years he waited patiently for the Umbrellas to return, and upon his mother Sissy's death, he ended up feeling them. Unable to control his powers, he accidentally killed them all, except for Ben's, who again, he never met. Now, little disclaimer, Elliot Page of course transitioned in real life, and when discussing his character, I'll just be using the name Victor. They reuse a lot of clips from the second season to add new context to the character becoming who he truly is, and it's handled pretty well in my opinion. Now in this timeline, Marcus, Ben, Faye, Alfonso, Sloane, Jamie and Christopher became the Sparrow Academy, who were formed to stop a mysterious threat called Project Oblivion. Netflix series have shown us recently that you can't trust number one, like you can't trust no one, and though this, like no 001, and though this is the case, initially with Marcus and Ben, they do come around. I'm sorry for that. Now, they are more successful, mainly due to the fact they didn't split up, as the Umbrellas had several tragedies happen. 5 went missing, Ben died and this led to the group fracturing, whereas here, they're a much more stable unit. They also have their father on medication, which sedates him, and this puts a stop to him being the manipulative monocle that he was in the comics. He still has plans for them to go on a suicide mission, which they don't want to happen, hence them filling him with pills. Now this season sees both the Umbrellas and Sparrows having to deal with yet another apocalypse, making that 3 in 3 seasons.
Oh shit, here we go again.
This is because their arrival also brings about the appearance of a black hole-esque object known as a Kugleblitz, which it's believed is brought out due to the paradox that the Umbrellas have created. Due to their mothers being killed before they were born, they very much set up the grandfather paradox, which 5 explains during episode 2.
Why don't you explain this to me like I'm 5?
This is a well-established theoretical discussion in science that ponders if one would be able to time travel in order to kill their grandfather, because in doing so, it would mean they were never born. Thus, they'd never be able to go back and kill him in the first place, so
it's more like a big ball of wibbly-wobbly, timey-wimey stuff.
Now, the commission we saw last season attempted to ensure that this never happened, but well, it did due to them being defeated. With the umbrellas technically not existing, this creates the Kugleblitz, and it starts to fire out a wave that slowly destroys reality. In the comics, this was the result of a combination of the people in the Hotel Oblivion prison causing chaos in the city, and the villain Terminal used this to build his strength. The season is very much about how the past can come back to haunt you, and nowhere is this more apparent than in the arrival of Harlan. When we last saw him, he was levitating a foreboding Sparrow at the end of season 2, but now he's all grown up. Now, making it so that the umbrellas never existed also meant that Allison never had a daughter, which sends her into a deep spiral in what's one of the most complicated and well-acted subplots this season. All these issues eventually build up, and it means that the world slowly starts to look like an incursion in the multiverse of madness. Now, as their members are taken out one by one, the Sparrows and umbrellas put their differences to the side and try to get to the bottom of what's going on. They also have a face-off in episode 1, which juxtaposes what happens in the comics. In the source material, the face-off happened in the final issue of Volume 3, with them easily outmatching the sloppy Umbrella Academy. Not much is known about them in the source material, but they will be explored more in the upcoming volume titled Sparrow Academy. After this, they all lick their wounds and head to the Hotel Obsidian, which in the show is like a merge of Shadow Marmont combined with the Cecil Hotel. There are also several references to The Shining, namely in the carpet pattern used, and this pretty much becomes the mainstay location for the series. The pandemic obviously had a big effect on the show, and there were definitely aspects of it limited by what was happening in the world. Obsidian was built by Hargreeves as a cover for the portal to another dimension, and this is watched over by trypophobia triggering guardians. Here Lila arrives with her and Diego's apparent son Stan, who you may recognise as being Ashtray from Euphoria. This entire thing was a test to see if Diego would be a good dad and stay with her, which he does in the end, as he's really a big softie, like your Uncle Kevin's spoilers. Now, we discover Stan was actually a kid she found in Berlin after being set free by the Commission, and he ends up getting wiped out by the Kugleblitz later on in the series. As for the Commission, it turns out that their founder was actually an older version of 5, who warns his younger self not to stop the apocalypse. Joke time. What you call old 5? 95.
Ha ha!
Also, I don't know if this is an older version of 5 or if the younger 5 is older, but moving on. Now, we also learn what happened to Pogo in this universe and discover that he ended up joining a biker gang after leaving Hargreeves' employment. This biker gang was also in the comics named the Mothers of Agony, but they were connected to Klaus's story instead. Now, Pogo ended up training with them, but he fell out with Hargreeves over the Oblivion mission, which we learn will kill all those that take part in it. Interestingly, in the opening of episode 6, we see that the group are forced to fight over a bell, and these bells end up playing into the finale as being what the group must stand on. Hargreeves tells them that this legend of the 7 bells comes from myths, and he plays coy over the whole thing, even though he's subliminally planting the idea in their heads that this is how they save everyone. Whereas in the comics, the hotel was akin to Arkham Asylum or the Raft. As mentioned earlier, it absorbs life in order to power the machine to reset the universe. Reginald has tried several times to charge up the device, and we see a mixture of soldiers sent into the pocket dimension that all get wiped out by the Guardians. This is why Hargreeves decided to train the children, so that they'd be strong enough to fight back. Pogo didn't want to be a part of it though, and neither did the Sparrows, because they knew that it would lead to their deaths. This led to the Sparrows drugging him so that it couldn't happen, and thus Hargreeves was unable to put his plan in motion. Now he just sits about watching TJ Hooker until Klaus comes along and gets him off the drugs. He of course was addicted himself, and he sees saving him and finally getting some quality time as somewhat redemptive. This opens up a full storyline where Klaus is manipulated once more to get not only the Umbrellas back together, but to get Hargreeves back into the family so that he can use them to enact his plan. Elsewhere, Allison learns of Harlan's attack on their mothers, and she ends up killing him. She also joins forces with Hargreeves later on, due to him providing a way to bring back her daughter. This alternate timeline at the end seemingly gives everyone their heart's desires, as not only does she come back, but so does Ray, who she of course only knew in the 60s. Again, lots of timey-wimey wibbly-wobbly stuff, but there is even potential that this may be a false reality or heaven due to everyone getting what they want, even though a number of paradoxes would be created. Alongside this, we also have the romance of Luther and Sloane, and slowly over the season, they start to fall in love. As reality dwindles away, they decide to get married to spend the rest of their lives together. Next 4 hours, you suckers.
See you, chump.
Now there's a small party, and after it, Hargreeves makes a pact with Allison, and he then later kills Luther. This was designed to bring them all together to stop the destruction, which again calls back to the season 1 saying that they only see each other at weddings and funerals. Klaus is killed in the final wave, and the remaining heroes end up fighting the Guardians. Standing on the sigils, they defeat the final one, but then the truth about the machine is revealed. Allison realizes that it'll kill her family, and thus she ends up murdering Hargreeves, stopping his plan. However, she still goes to press the button, and though Victor initially tries to stop her, he ends up trusting that it's the right thing to do. Not like there was anything else to do anyway, and this changes the entire timeline. Now interestingly, they travel there on an elevator, which could be a nod to the comics, namely the ones that they use to travel into the hotel. This new universe seems completely idyllic, and rather than being how it should really be, it's exactly how they want it to be. Ray appears to be the father of Claire instead of Allison's ex-husband, and the heroes no longer have their powers. This also means that Luther's body is back to normal, and that he's no longer fused with ape DNA. Everyone hurt or killed also appears to be alive, with Diego getting his fingers back. However, Sloane is missing, and though Luther goes looking for her, we're left wondering whether she exists here. Now the heroes find a plaque with a brass model of Hargreaves' head that was donated on the day the children were meant to be born. It's unlikely that he ever went looking for them because he didn't need to release the orbs due to his wife Abigail still being alive. Again, it's an example of the grandfather paradox, and it's going to be interesting to see whether this causes another Kugleblitz. Now it also seems that he's taken over with all the skyscrapers bearing his name, and it's important to note that they look far more advanced than what the city used to be like. Now I have seen theories that Allison might be in her own separate timeline. This is because she didn't arrive in the elevator with the rest of the group, and her arm still has a bandage on it. I think this is probably just down to the fact that she was the one who pressed the button, and perhaps Reginald wanted to keep the things that were part of his body in this universe. He may have had plans to mod it like what he did with Luther, and even if he didn't carry this out, he could have wished to build a way to retain parts of himself if it ever came to that. However, this could also be because she didn't get drained like the other members did. They all stood on the sigils, whereas she didn't, so in this reality, she could end up still possessing her powers. This could mean Allison might potentially use them as ways to bring back the abilities of the other family members, and I heard a rumour that you subscribe to the channel. Now, not having his powers will allow number 5 to actually grow up. Aidan Gallagher is 18 now, so it's going to be a bit difficult going forward for him to constantly keep playing a 13-year-old, so they might have done this as a way to let him age up a bit. We did see something similar at the end of Eternals, and it makes sense looking at what things are going on behind the scenes. Now going forward, I think that the cast of characters will realise that their lives are all missing something, and that though this seems like an ideal world, it's actually not. They might end up having to take on their father once more, and potentially they could end up restoring the universe back to how it was in the first season. It's difficult to use the source material to guess where things are going to go, as it's not really in line with the work at this point, and if you've read the graphic novels, then you'll know the show is only very loosely based on them. From here we then cut to the post-credits scene, and we have what I believe is the original Ben, seemingly living his life in Seoul, South Korea. With this being an ideal timeline and him never being part of the Umbrellas, it would make sense that he never died as a kid. Though his spirit left in peace in Season 2, there was another version of him created for the 3rd season, whereas the other children were stopped from existing by Harlan. Therefore, we likely have 2 Bens, namely the Sparrow timeline version and the original one. However, him being born and being on the same train shows that his mother still had him. Makes you wonder how this happened, as his sudden pregnancy was down to the orbs. Behind him we also see sparks that look like them flashing up, and though this could just be off the train tracks, it could also potentially be the powers, if we're reaching, which we often are. Now I also scanned the QR code in this scene, and as many of you know, we get early access to shows like this. Nothing was coming up for weeks, so I was actually expecting it to be a massive secret like the announcement of the release date for Volume 4, or even a new season. However, it's just a link to Pogo's tattoo shop where you can get designs. Bit of a waste of time, so Pogo on that, you twat. So going forward, I'd love to have us learn that this is an alternate world where everything worked out. However, this might show that there are doppelgangers in this universe and the group could come to realize that they don't belong there. This could make them want to reset the universe once more, as they're stuck in a timeline where they're not welcome. Who knows, they might even try and start the apocalypse this time, which I think would be a great twist. Hargreeves seems like he could be a tyrant in this reality, and whereas the other seasons were clearly about resurrecting his wife, this could be about killing her. They are of course both aliens, and the pair might rule over the planet like tyrants. Lots of possibilities, and as for my thoughts on the series, I think this was probably my second favourite one. Season 2 is still the top for me, but this was brilliant, and it's so good being back with the family. They, like this season, all have their bad points, but overall they're such a fun group to hang around with that it's difficult not to have a blast. Whether it's the opening dance number or just the situations they find themselves in, I had a lot of fun even though I feel the series did fall apart a bit towards the end. Obviously the pandemic massively affected this as well, and whereas in the past we'd get lots of jumping around locations through not only time but the city, this one becomes a bit stationary. Still though, I enjoyed what we got and the character development, numerous twists and reveals that all build up nicely on what's come before. Kinda wild to me that both this and The Boys have been better than all the other comic book shows by bigger studios, and I think they could learn a thing or two from them. In the end, Umbrella Academy Season 3 was great, and it gets an 8 out of 10. I'd of course love to hear your thoughts, so make sure you comment below and let me know. We're running a competition right now and giving away 3 copies of Everything Everywhere All at Once on the 15th of July, and all you have to do to be on the chance of winning is like the video, make sure you subscribe with notifications on, and drop a comment below with your thoughts on the season. We picked the victors, on the 15th, and the winners of the last one are on screen right now, so if that's you, message me on Twitter at HeavySpoilers. If you want something else to watch, then make sure you check out our breakdown of Obi-Wan, which will be linked on screen right now. We went over the full season finale and talked about the Easter eggs in it, things you missed, and also gave our thoughts on it. Definitely go head over there right after this, and with that out of the way, thanks for sitting through this. I've been Paul, I'll see you next time. Take care, peace.